everybody. Well, we've got the lovely weather with us and I've got the first of the roses in the garden. So I thought this morning we'd have a go at drawing a rose. Although it's a bit more complicated, you can break it down and get it quite simply in your mind, and then it's a case of looking and drawing, and it really is looking and drawing because the shapes keep changing as you work your way around the petals. But I'm going to start with the simplest of the roses, and that is one that is more in bud, and they're a little bit easier to draw. So I would say children or people who are just beginning, sometimes it's easier to get a rose that's in bud. I've clipped it on here, that is the best I can do, and I am going to have to draw a little bit from the front today because I can't get to it from the side. So I'm looking at this rose here, and it's easy to see that the rose comes into that shape. So basically it has the sepals, but basically it's coming into that kind of shape. It has like different petals there, it'll have things coming down. As you make it bigger, it will have different flowers. But trying to draw this one here, I'll have a go. I started at the top and then worked my way down. You will need a rubber today because you'll find that you have to keep correcting. I'm drawing them larger, so it's a little bit more difficult, but you have to keep looking at it all the time. And I've sat for quite some time and had a go at this, but again I had to keep changing it and changing it, looking at one thing in relation to another and working my way around the petals. Mine looks a bit wiggly because the board moves terribly, this board here. But you'll find that petals fold back. They fold back on themselves. And that's where we have the difficulty. But I'll show you more on the bigger roses later on. The sepals, which protect the flower when it's growing, they come out here, fold down, and it depends at which stage the rose is at as to what the sepals look like. So on this one I could see sideways on for that, and that one. I can see under here, it's at a different angle now for me, but you have this bulbous part that the flower, little insect, is under here, and the stem comes down. And then you have various leaves coming off, and they come off so that you can't see them all full on, so you have to be careful about that. And then I had a big leaf which came behind and a smaller one here, but this big leaf I'll carry on here. So that's basically this rose here, which is a simpler kind. So if you're starting out, you might like to choose from the garden a simpler leaf, rose rather. This is the one that I'll probably try and paint this afternoon. Again, the longer you have them out of the water, the more they wilt slightly and the angles of everything will change. But you can get the general idea. I'll try and clip that. It just gives you an idea. So I started at the top here. I always start at the top of a rose and just get this bit in. And then I can see that I've got to get it back to that shape. But I have various petals that are curling back. So I have a straight and then I have a curling back piece here. And then inside of that I can see. So all of this I have to have in my mind when I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the various bits and pieces that are coming here. That might not be quite right, but it's just to give you the general idea of what that kind of shape. Some of these sepals coming down here. They have little spiky bits coming off if you look. And then a big petal there. Bring the stem down. And then I had these tiny bits of leaves. So again, you have to keep looking because you'll see every single rose is quite different. The shapes of the leaves are slightly different. Where they come off is different. That one is going behind the stem here. The veins on the leaf, which if I rub that out, I can show you. Go a little bit like this. So that's that leaf, which is slightly more complicated. And then we're going to have a go at the most complicated, which is a sort of full-blown leaf. Which, beautiful, isn't it? But, again, more complicated, and it will be slightly different to when I first drew it, because the angle that I was working at. But again, you have to have in your mind to get back to that nice shape. And in fact, it doesn't really matter if you don't get it quite right, as long as you get the shape of it nice. I think that's what's important. You're probably never going to get it exactly as it is, so don't worry about it. But this, you've got to start from the centre here. So I start from the centre and then I work my way out, doing petals at a time. So I'm working my way out from a circle and gradually looking at what petal comes next. So I'm going from one to the other and then working my way down, each time trying to look that I'm working sort of that way around, and that petal was folded back. to keep it a little bit out of the way, which is difficult when you're drawing. And this has a bit of a wiggly edge, but you can see that gradually we can keep going and building a petal at a time from the centre. And I had a sepal going up there, so it was quite different. The underneath of this one had this bulbous part which I could see, came down, a narrower stem coming off with the leaves, so you have to look each time to exactly see what's happening, and you'll find that one leaf will be behind another, hiding what you're doing. Okay, so you can see that gradually you can build up different kinds of roses. So there's the complicated one. That's a bit simpler. You can do it even simpler if you have quite a closed bud, and that is quite a nice shaped rose. But starting from that point and then working your way out. I'll leave that on, I think. Then it will show you. Materials that you need. You can do this with coloured pencils. You need to again try and pick the pencils which you think the colours are going to be useful. You can do it with felt tip pens, but you need a range of colours, I think, and it's again slightly more difficult. I'm going to show you how to paint it. So you're going to need your watercolours, your brushes. So I've got brushes in here, your 2 water jars, one for washing and one for wetting, and some kind of a mixing palette. So we'll have a go at this because it's quite nice to do. Okay. So you can try this on cartridge paper. It will work even if you dampen your paper, and you can try it with coloured pencils, but try and get the coloured pencils together which are going to be colours which are very similar to your rose. I'm going to do it with watercolour today for you. And this is the rose that I've drawn. The rose here will not look exactly the same as that because I had it at a different angle, but that's as best as I can get it to show you. Also, I've drawn it heavily on the paper here, on the watercolour paper, just so that you can see it. But it's very important in watercolour that you draw very lightly, because at the end you should rub it out. I haven't drawn the leaves in quite as heavily because I'll show you a technique that you can get this nice wavy edge later on, so I didn't want that to be too heavy. So I started to draw, if you remember, here. So I started here and then I worked my way around the flower, doing a petal at a time, looking at the shapes of spaces that are left always, and coming back to this part here, this cup-shaped part, which grows out of this bulbous green piece here with the sepals folding back, and then we have the stem and the leaves. But on the rose we have lots of parts that fold back, where the petals fold back. So let's see how we can do those. I always have a piece of spare paper so that you can test the colours. I've already dampened my watercolour so that each colour is fairly soft, so that they're easy to work with. Remember that in watercolour we don't use white. We add water to make the colour lighter. So trying to get this colour is a little bit difficult. We've got these deeper pinks. We've got a yellow going in here, a much paler pink there, and as it folds over, some lighter parts. So we've got to look at all of those colours and try and get them. And I think it's a sort of mixture of an orange and a pink. So I'll put some on there. All my colours seem to be running into each other, but we won't worry about that. And we add some water and a little bit of red. And we keep working till we try and think we've got a colour which is similar. And I'm going to add water to it and see what that colour is coming out like. Probably a little bit more orange and even maybe a bit of yellow. So I'm adding, a bit too much. I'll take up some of that colour there. Not bad, but a bit too deep. We'll add some water. Let's have a look. And maybe a bit of this red. So I keep adding colours until I try and think I've got a similar kind of colour. I think that's not too bad. It's not always easy mixing colours. So we just try and get the nearest that we can. We're going to wet a petal at a time and leave that to dry and go back to it. So this time when I say wet, I mean barely dampen. You don't want it too wet. So I'm going to have a go at this one up here. And the beauty of it is that when it starts to run into each other, you'll see you get this very nice effect. So I'm going to look for that bit deeper pink at the top. And then just bring it down gently. So it's going from a slightly deeper to a bit paler. So I'm just dragging the colour down. And already that has dried a little bit. So you can dampen it again at any time. If you want to try and get a range of colours coming on, I think maybe a bit yellowy orange. I've got this yellowy orange coming in here, and maybe a bit And if it's damp and it's watercolour paper, you'll find that it will sort of run and look very nice. What you are trying to get is so that it's not painted in flat colours. That's the whole idea. If you just think, oh well, I'll mix a red and I paint that red, then you will get a very flat picture. So we'll let that one dry and we'll start another one. We'll try here. And this is very pale. It's a pinky shade, I think. But it's quite light, isn't it? A bit of origin. I know you can't see all the colours I'm mixing. It's nearly impossible to get everything that I need to show you into the picture with the camera from the phone. I just have to try and do my best here. Just a tiny bit there, and then let it blend back with your brush and your water. Now you can take more off. If I dry my brush like this, I can take colour off. So I can wipe that. If I want it paler, I can keep taking off. But again, it shouldn't be just one colour. It should be slightly grading there. And then we'll keep going. We'll try. I say it's altered from when I drew it because it was at a different angle. But I'll try maybe this one here. So just dampen. Try not to get it too wet this time. You just want it to try and blend a little bit. And you can see that the colour starts to sort of blend out a bit, doesn't it? Maybe a little bit deeper on the edge there. You're not going to get the exact colour, but just have a go, see what you can get. And blend it with some water. So you get it sort of that feeling of deeper at the edge, and then it's getting paler. You can add different colours as you go along. We'll try this one next. I haven't got time to let mine dry completely. You will have. I might try that one. So I'm trying to do petals away from each other so they all don't blend into one blur. I'm trying to keep that. So I can take it up, take it to the edges. So you get that kind of effect. Now here, if I keep looking, I've got this deeper where it goes underneath the petal. So I can add that, and that will start to blend. And then I've got a little bit of a lemony colour, I think, coming in. There. And we might grab a little bit of yellow, would look nice there. So you can start to add little bits to it. Just thought that was a bit yellow. I can take it off. Then I'm going to do this petal here. So I say just dampen, try not to soak it. It isn't like the sky that we did. We're just trying to get the colours to slightly run. And where the petal tips over, it's going to be a bit deeper underneath. So I'll put one colour on and then I can deepen it. I think it wants to be darker still. You see I've got tissue in my hand that I keep drying my brush on. So if I darken behind where the petal is rolling over, then that will stand out more. Then as we leave it, it will start to blend. While you've got a colour, you might think, oh, well, I should add a bit of that there. And we'll try and do this top bit now. Whoops. So we dampen it. It's quite pale, so I'm just putting a bit on. I'm drying my brush off and I'm kind of taking it off a little bit. So I want to keep that fairly light there. Then I can decide where I'm going to have it dark, and it's probably quite dark in where the flower is there, the middle of it, the middle of the rose here. Maybe so it goes down there. So you can just keep playing about with it, but you can take it off as well as put it on with your brush. So I'm taking it off with the dry brush. Probably should get a clean piece. I'll do this one next. Lost the thread of where I am with this because it's not at the same angle that I was doing it, but we'll try. That's probably light. We'll leave that light. I might have a go with this. This is the folded back part. So where it folds back, it's light, isn't it? And then it tips a bit darker underneath there. So I'll try and keep that light, I think. But you can see I can almost leave that bit white almost here and then that will come out like that. Yeah, I'll just do this. It's very peaceful painting flowers actually, and then just gentle it across. I'm hoping I'm not getting my head in the way all the time. It's difficult. I'm just getting that so that that shows up there a little bit. Darkening behind the rose. But always you can add more water, you know, if you're getting a bit of a solid line. But you can see that curling over and that's curling over. We're going to do that little bit in there now. And it's quite sort of has a bit of a yellowy orange look there. And it's going to need to be a bit deeper so that it shows those two folding petals back. And it has a bit of nice orangey colour. Try and leave some light so that it looks three-dimensional really, so that it gets that kind of feeling. And we've got this that's part of that, I think. If you've got a flower that's a rose that's just a bud, you might find that easier. You haven't got as many petals to think about. Mine, because I've come to the end of where I can leave them dry a little bit, they will start to just run a tiny bit, but we'll manage. Watercolours are very pleasant to use. I think they're very soothing. But I say it's worth investing in watercolour paper. If you like to use watercolour, it's worth investing in the paper because the paper itself makes things run. So there's basically our rose. We could work on that for hours probably. But we're going to look at the sepals here and the stem. It's difficult for me to get it so that you can see it, but that is the flower and the sepals are under here. So I'll push that back a bit further, and they have like a grey shade, don't they? So I'll turn a plate round a little bit and see if we can mix a bit of that colour. So we need some green. And some yellow, because it's pale, isn't it? Pale green. Maybe a tiny bit of blue. Blue is a very strong colour. You have to be very careful with blue. I'm going to mix a little bit of grey with it. Again, get your practice piece and try it. You see that's too dark, isn't it? So then I'll blend that blue and grey together. Yeah, that's not bad. So again, we'll dampen sepal, not too much. As I say, we want to keep the shapes. Add a bit of green at the top, it has a bit of green on. And then it has a bit of the pink. So there's one sepal, not too bad. We'll do the same with this one. I'm not wetting this one because it's too narrow. Maybe need a bit of green on it. And then we've got this one here, which is more green. So we'll add some green. We'll dampen it. And we need a bit of grey. Maybe a bit of the pink. We can get a bit of texture on it. We turn our brush upside down. So that's with the wooden part, isn't it? The wooden part. Just makes it slightly different. And the last sepal. A bit of bluey grey. And a bit of the pink because it keeps it all turning together. Right, so we've got the sepals done, and now we're thinking about the bulbous part and the stem. And if I turn that, it's green with a bit of pink. We must have a light side and a dark side to try and make it look three-dimensional. So a bit more of the green. In. And we'll dampen it. So the best thing is if you can keep going and hope the phone doesn't go again. So paint one side and leave the other side unpainted. And we might need a little bit of darker one side here. That's a bit of a strong green. And then just blend it across and it'll go paler that side. I'm not keen on that green. So we can turn it down a bit, maybe a bit of yellow on it. That's better. See, it didn't go, did it? That very dark green. It didn't look realistic. Keep going down with the stem. And again, I'm trying to go just one side, and the stem is quite pale. It's a nice sort of pale green. So as we come down, we'll try and keep it light. baby leaves really here. And they have bits of pink and red on. We just pop bits of pink and red. Okay. Just going to darken one side here a little bit. So again, when we're thinking of dark, medium and light, aren't we always, when we're trying to make something look three-dimensional, we have to keep a light side to it. That's gone a bit dark there. If you dry your brush, you can always take a bit off. Right, so that's the rose and those, and now we have to do the leaves, which are a bit tricky. The leaves you want to try and do with the veins going to be the other end of your brush. You're going to try and get a few shades on and let them blend together, and then try and draw your veins on with the other end of your brush. So we're going to have a go at that. So there are lots of different shades on there, aren't they? So we might need to mix a few colours. A few different shades. And there's quite a lemony green there, isn't there? And then we'll leave a bit of light. There's light reflected on them. So we'll try this one. We'll dampen it. Oops. You can see by the colour that I often forget and put my brush in the wrong water jar, but never mind. So I've dampened it, and then I'm going to try and just run the colour. Now watch the edge. You want to try and get, you see how it's got that edge? Be impossible nearly to do it. I'm going to turn that round. But you can, just by wiggling your brush, get that edge to it, that kind of serrated edge here. We'll get some light in, some darker. And we'll leave some light. We need to paint up to that really. The leaves are quite a deep green, aren't they, with sort of yellowy bits here and there. Might put a bit more yellowy there. Right, so now I'm going to turn my brush over. And there, I've got the leaf with the veins. I'll try this one. So don't worry about turning your paper around, you've got to sometimes. I'm going to dampen this. Oof. Yeah, done it again. But at least you'll be able to see where I'm painting the water. Right, get your greens and see if you can get that edge. I can only do it sort of one way, that's why I have to turn it round. I can only jiggle my brush. one way, turn it back. Get some yellow on it, yellowy green. And you can see how the colours blend, don't they, very nicely. Then get your brush, the other end, and put your veins in. Right. You maybe want a bit dark on that. A bit darker here. So you can go back and touch things up. I'll stop it and do the other two leaves, and then it won't take as much time. And then I'll show you just how to finish off with a few thorns. I think we should put a few thorns on. So I'll stop it. Right, so I've painted the leaves to show you, and the only thing I've got to do now is to put a tiny few of these red thorns on that you can see. So if I hold that, just very tiny. Just to make it look real. You just need a tiny point on your brush, and just here and there to put a little red thorn. Okay, and then basically we're finished. You can see that here I put a bit darker leaf because it was going behind here and here, but that's basically our rose. Don't be put off by it. It's more complicated than most flowers, but if you take it a stage at a time, you'll be able to do it. So there it is, finished. Okay.